Hello, and welcome to Lore Watch, a roundtable freeform discussion about lore and your favorite media. I'm your host, Joe Perez, one of several lore-focused folks from Blizzard Watch, and I've got my marvelous co-host with me today, Matt Ross. How are you doing today, Matt?
I'm still not going to fight the thing, man. That's crazy. You get somebody else.
Yeah, before we started recording, Matt and I had a brief discussion about the new Ultimates universe in the Marvel Comics.
I don't care if he's a Chrysalis or not. I'm not fighting him.
Exactly. And this
I wouldn't fight Ben Grimm. Just no powers, Ben Grimm. The dude killed Nazis.
He did.
In one time, like
he did. For those of you that are potentially interested in stuff like that, I was just thinking to myself, it's been a while since we've done an Elseworlds or off-topic show. So if there's something you'd like to be interested in or talking about, whether it's comics or movies or upcoming movies, since Fantastic Four does have an upcoming movie coming out, and maybe you want to know a little bit more about them and their history, and whether it's the main universe or the Marvel Ultimate Universe, drop us a line. Let us know if that's something you'd be interested in. Maybe Matt and I will spend an hour and probably more talking about comic books, because believe it or not, I do actually really like the Fantastic Four. Not as much as Spider-Man, but it's up there.
Fantastic Four has got a good thing going.
They do.
It's good concept. It's a kind of amazing to me that so many writers seem to have a hard time with it. It's like, this shouldn't be this complicated, guys.
No, and again, there's so much we could talk about, especially like some of my favorite series and favorite moments and weird moments in there. But we don't have time for that. Instead, we're going to be answering today your questions from our wonderful listeners out there in Radio Land. If you have questions for this or any of our podcasts, be sure to send those in at podcast@blizzardwatch.com. Specify the show that it is for, as well as any special pronunciation of your name, if you have one. You can also hit us up on Discord. We have the Q and Podcast question channel set aside for all of our wonderful members. They're just listeners, people that can just, you can just submit your questions there. Go for it. Same rules apply. If you help support us on Patreon, we do like to give you a little extra bonus as a way of saying thank you. You can hit us up in the Patreon Q and Podcast questions channel, where we tend to look there first for questions for any of our shows. And you can also send your messages directly in and questions directly in to us via Patreon, where Liz will ensure that we get them. As a matter of fact, there was one I think I may have forgotten to put into the email today, but if we get to it, I will wind up reading it out, because it was a good question, and it's something that, we should always cover when you send us stuff. All right, friends, without further ado, let's start with one from Metalzani. I had a thought while listening to the latest episode. So I thought, what if the Emerald Dream was originally a prison plane like the Elemental one to trap and hold wild gods / Loa, because they were not ordered enough for Aman'Thul? So when A&R discovered this with the help of Freya and her comic bestie lover / lover Elune, they find a loophole by sending them to Ardenwell to be reborn with Elune's sister, then get sent back to the Emerald Dream. I find it hard to believe Aman'Thul would be cool with a realm of wild nature touching his precious ordered Azeroth, and most of what we know about the past is what the Titans want us to know. From the sounds of that last expansion in the trilogy, we're going to find out that maybe the Titans might not be as great as mortal races think, so it would make sense to find out maybe they just view us as a secondary to the main goal of waking up Azeroth. I'm going to let Matt say what he's going to say here, but yeah, that's part of it. I think we were always secondary. I don't think they really truly care about us, but that's a whole other thing. But
I don't think it's disputable that they don't care about us. I think we are consequences. We're not the goal. The world that they want to preserve and allow to come to fruition creates living things as part of its process. In fact, we are cast off from their creation. The Titans made the Titan Forged. The Titan Forged made more smaller Titan Forged, and eventually, whether it's on purpose, and we've talked about whether or not the Curse of Flesh is on purpose or not, or it's something imposed or what have you. We're like, I don't want to say dandruff, but I can't come up with a better word for like what we are in the eyes of the Titan. We're not the goal. We are just there. That being said, I mean, anything you just said here could be the case. People often think I just dismiss people's ideas just because I'm crotchety. So I want to make sure I say this. This could absolutely be the case.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it is. That's why I'm always careful on these kind of things, because I don't want to make you feel bad if later on it turns out that the writers don't go this way, because it's nothing to do with your idea and your idea being good. It's just that they've already set up whatever it's going to be, and they haven't shared it yet. So up until the moment where, we do get them to share it with us, all we're working on is speculation based on stuff they have shared. And in that vein, this is nice speculation. It's a good job of putting together a lot of things that have been established.
Mm-hmm.
Is it going to be what they do? I have no idea. I think we're going to still find out the Emerald Dream is a little different than we've been led to think it is.
Yeah.
One of the things go ahead, Joe.
No, I was going to say I agree with you. I think that the Emerald Dream is going to be much more complicated, and we've already seen some shades of that. Like when the Emerald Dream was first told to us, we were told it was a backup copy of Azeroth, that, you know, if everything went sideways, this is what Azeroth would revert to. Then we find out that that's not actually the case. They have a whole reorigination beam for that, and it's not tied to the Emerald Dream at all. The Titan facilities don't tap into the Emerald Dream. As a matter of fact, like, I don't believe we have any Titan facilities that really tap into it that we know of, or that have any sort of pull from it. Everything from the Titans has been completely separated from it. And then to look at it and say that it's a backup copy of Azeroth, cool, how? So I think we've already seen that it's really not that. Then Ardenweald threw a lot of that into, like you pointed out here, a lot of that into question, right? Why is Ardenweald and the Emerald Dream so tightly connected? Why is that a mechanism that's in place when it doesn't seem to be in place in any of the other areas? And why does it only seem to happen there? Or one of the things that Matt brought up, one listening real quick, you brought this up a while ago, Matt, and it's something that lives rent free in my brain. What if the Emerald Dream is not something specific to Azeroth, but something that exists on other planets and other areas as well? Like, there's so much more that it could be, and I'm going to let Matt talk now because, again, that lives rent free in my brain.
Well, I was just thinking as you were talking, the first thing that I thought of is that we use the term Emerald Dream to describe something, and we don't know if the Emerald Dream is one subsection of a bigger thing, the way Ardenweald is one subsection of the Shadowlands, or if the Emerald Dream is the parallel to the Shadowlands, and there's a specific part of it that is the part that is Ardenweald's twin.
Yeah,
and if that's the case, we know that Elune is involved in the Emerald Dream. We don't know how, but we know that she is. We know that the druids that tap into the Emerald Dream can tap into Elune's power. Like, she is not the originator of it, but she is related to it in some way. I find myself thinking about this a lot when it comes to how Elune and Aeon are related to each other. We know that Elune has other night warriors on other worlds. We know that there are other worshippers of Elune in other planets. Yeah, we've met one. We've also been to a world literally named Alundris, and it was the world that Aeonar was hiding out on. So I keep wondering to myself, the Emerald Dream could be as the Shadowlands are, and it could be as other, like the Twisting Nether touches all parts, touches multiple realities and touches multiple worlds. And it's not the Great Dark Beyond. They're different things. The Great Dark Beyond seems to be physical. It's not another realm of existence. It's a physical thing in this realm of existence. It's literally like space. So if if these things exist in the way that they exist, the way that we've seen the Shadowlands, the way that we've seen with the Twisting Nether, we've gotten hints about the light realm, whatever the heck it is. We've never been there, but we have been to the Shadowlands and we have been to the Twisting Nether. It's quite possibly Emerald Dream is similarly vast, and it could be the life realm, right? I mean, we've got a death realm. The Emerald Dream could be the life realm. And just because the Titans built something in there doesn't mean that that's the whole thing.
Yeah, there's definitely an element of that. And I think you might be onto something there as well. And maybe what we call the Emerald Dream is actually the life realm, because we know that there is a realm of death. We know that there's a realm of life. There has to be. The way that the cosmos is set up, and at least the way that the first ones have described it, the various cosmologies, the grimoires, and everything else, again, taken with a grain of salt, unreliable narrators and all that jazz. But there should be a realm of life, or something that is like unfettered chaos almost. And because that's what life is. So
yeah, but we can also have, like, it feels like each of these realms is actually a combination of other realms.
Yes.
Because we've got the Twisting Nether, which is definitely chaotic, but it's chaotic destruction.
Mm-hmm.
And death seems like order destruction.
Mm-hmm.
And the realm that the Titans seem to have come from feels like it's life and order combined. but mostly order. And it feels like the Emerald Dream could be, life and light, but mostly life. I mean, there's who knows? I don't know. We know that we've seen the orrery go in different ways, but I keep thinking about that idea that there could be infinite realms inside the Emerald Dream.
Yeah.
And one of them is like some Titan outpost where they have a backup of Azeroth. Maybe they did do that. Maybe there is a backup copy of Azeroth, but maybe that's not. Maybe when we say that, the backup copy of Azeroth, it isn't like they formatted a hard drive. It's just that all the memories of life on Azeroth echo there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I can see that.
It's not as easy as, okay, we're going to originate the planet, now we'll just pull from the backup. But it's more like there's a memory remnant of the place over here. And you got to feel like there's got to be some kind of consequence to the shattering, right? The sundering.
Yeah, the sundering.
I can't remember which one it is. Sundering. There has to be some kind of consequence to like the biggest continent in the world disintegrating, and all those people getting drowned, and all this stuff happening. So, but the deal with Aonar and Freya and all of that stuff. Freya is a unit made by Aonar in much the same way that Aman'Thul made Odin and Master Ra. I don't remember who made Tyr. He might be from Agramar, but I'm not 100% on that. But point being, Freya might have been the means by which Aonar could study it. Because it's not like Aonar can just jam herself into Azeroth and take a really close look at the way she's organized. Too big and too cosmic for that. So it could have been Freya who did that. We do know that Freya viewed the Emerald Dream as something more, because we see her. When you go to Ulduar, Freya's realm is like a little pocket of the Emerald Dream.
Mm-hmm.
And she's deliberately, people talk a lot about how she shaped it. Like, maybe the thing she shaped was the basic. When you're going to explore a new reality or a new anything, you need a base station, right? You need a place to start from.
Yeah, you need, yeah.
And so that might be what the Titan stuff that relates to the Emerald Dream is, because we know that Freya had Emerald Dream related stuff in her, like, I don't know what you call it, her quarters in Uldaman, and we know that the Temple of Life that she had was another such thing. Maybe that's the deal with the Titans, trying to understand something that they didn't understand, because we saw them do that with the old gods too, right? Like, that's Uldir.
Yeah.
So that's just what I'm bouncing off of, is the idea that the Titans do seem to have a very slight presence, but there's no Titan facility that's like a big blooming life thing. There's like, the most we get is like, there's a quarter of Ulduar, and there's a little bit of weird mutant stuff in Uldir, and that's basically it. And maybe that's because of Aman'Thul. Maybe that's because Aman'Thul was not comfortable with life. Life kind of seems to confuse Aman'Thul. He doesn't really like it because it does all sorts of weird stuff. It keeps, it keeps making him get the ick, for lack of a better word. So I don't know. I do think that there's a lot of possibility here to think about, at least. And I do think it's interesting to wonder, why does there exist a reincarnation platform? Like, why does Ardenweald and the Emerald Dream have this pipeline?
So one of the things that I find it fascinating about this, and this is something that I was thinking about with Zani's question, is, yes, this could have been a prison realm, but I'm wondering if it was something a little bit different. And part of it is, when Matt was talking, something popped into my head that was the whole, what we've learned this expansion and what we've learned recently of, essentially, Aonar went to Aman'Thul and said, "Look at this really cool nature stuff." And Aman'Thul went, "Yeah, no, dog, that ain't, I don't like that. That ain't a thing I really am down with. We can't have that." And I'm wondering if the Emerald Dream as we know it wasn't necessarily a prison, but almost unfettered rebirth onto the world, the true joy and expression of what Azeroth was dreaming. Something that was like this portion of life that was just wild and untamed and unchecked. And one of the things that the Titans did when they ordered the planet was push all of that stuff into check. And I'm wondering if they didn't necessarily create a prison realm, but shut the door, or tried to shut the door, so that there was more structure, more order, more whatever the case was, so that they could advance their plan. And then Aonar and Freya, in their reshaping of it or in their charge of it, and maybe with the help of a loon, sort of didn't exactly follow orders, right? Like, you make a point here that the wild gods seem like something that Aman'Thul would not be down with, and I tend to agree. They're very powerful entities. They're very specifically tied to Azeroth. They have an incredible amount of power. They fought the Legion, right? They saved Azeroth how many times with the help of others, but how many times did the wild gods intervene and help and do amazing feats, right? I don't think that was part of Aman'Thul's plan, but that may have been part of Elune and Aonar's plan, where we're not going to close the door. We're going to leave it open a crack. And as a little extra bonus, here's this tunnel that goes from this particular realm to Ardenwell. And maybe that was always part of the plan. Maybe Elune always knew about that, but maybe that was a deliberate choice by Elune to show Aonar and Freya, hey, here's my sister. She handles this portion of death and rebirth. I think this might be beneficial to keep your planet that you very clearly love intact. And thus the Emerald Dream, the portion that we have interacted with, became a reset place for being reborn into Azeroth, being born through that unfettered life, through that chaos. And it's still tempered. It's not as chaotic as it was. But I also come back to the point, like, the nightmare I don't think could have taken hold if it wasn't a place of pure potential, right? If it wasn't a powerful place of just absolute, beautiful, natural chaos. Because what is the void? The void is all possibility. What is pure life? All possibility. There's a thread between those two that I think is inextricably there that wouldn't have been there otherwise. So again, I don't maybe think that it was a prison to keep the wild gods away, although it very well could have been. And I do like that idea, but I think it may have been a door that they tried to shut to keep that chaos under wraps and to keep it from destroying or doing anything to their plans. Does that make sense?
I mean, there's certainly a possibility there. I don't know. The problem is always, who knows what's going to come out of it. But yeah, there certainly could be. I find myself wondering too, if maybe it's not even maybe if the part of the Emerald Dream was used by a prison, by the Titans, but again, that's just them building part of it in. We know that there was the elemental planes were created as a prison plane by the Titans, but we also know that the elements exist in other parts of existence. You know what I mean? There's plenty of worlds where the elements don't have a prison plane.
Yeah.
Does that mean there's an elemental plane that doesn't have a prison built into it?
Yeah, and it makes me wonder though. On that same front, it makes me wonder though, if those planes existed, the prison planes of Azeroth existed as planes and were just bubbles carved out of them.
Yeah, or put into them.
Yeah.
Either way. We know that Helia, can create pocket realms. That she did that alongside Master Ra. That doesn't mean that they're building the pocket realm out of nothing in nowhere. It could have just be there. There's an elemental plane of Earth, for lack of a better word, but the part of it that touches Azeroth is reinforced to keep them out of Azeroth.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the prison that they built, but they didn't build the entire plane of existence, because we know for sure they didn't build the Twisting Nether. They just built one prison world in it called Mardoon.
Mm-hmm.
And we could be looking at that situation with the Emerald Dream, where there is the dream around Azeroth might have some kind of prison-like qualities, or there might be a prison in it for the most uncomfortably wild things that Aman'Thul just could not handle. But that doesn't mean that the whole Emerald Dream is that. And so that's another thing to think about when we talk about all this. I think you have a good point about the concept of maybe Aonar and Freya decided to leave the door open a crack, or maybe they pushed it open, because we don't know who was Aman'Thul basically did his oopsie with Y'Shaarj,
mm-hmm.
and then kind of left it to everybody else to clean it up. And it's quite possible Freya, in contact with Aonar or not, might have been like they just left chunks of old god all over the planet. I need help cleaning this up. And she punched a hole in their prison if it was a prison. So there's all sorts of possibilities on this. I do like the idea of this there being like this subcurrent of rebellion in the Titans, in much the same way that it makes them less. I don't know how to put this. I feel like the Titans have been set up as these like all-knowing, all-powerful god beings, and I think that's not necessarily what we were intended to take from them.
Yeah, I think Go ahead. I was gonna say it reminds me a lot of like real world religion, right? Like you look at pantheons of the various different cultures throughout history, and some of them are more human than others. Like I'm looking at the Norse mythology in general, right? Like they were human, they made mistakes, they walked along mortals. A lot of their story were very like mortal based, and that makes sense for the people who were propagating those myths and that mythology. And then, the Egyptians, they were not, right? Like they were a little bit more removed. They were a little more ethereal. They were still present, but like, you can't tell me that like, Bast and the rest were just like kind of chilling in the, the middle of everybody's living room. Whereas it was not uncommon to see like Odin in disguise, even just chilling in like a bar with like random folks, or Thor, or whatever the case was. And Matt and I were talking about like other Slavic myths like Parun and a bunch of others. They're a lot more human based than some of the other cultures, and it almost feels like that undercurrent of rebellion that we're learning about makes the Titans more relatable, more human. And I think that's kind of important. It sounds weird to say that these vast cosmic beings are human, but I think it puts them in a different light. And to what Matt said, and I'll shut up and let him finish the thought here. We have for a long time thought of them as these all-knowing, all-seeing, all-powerful beings, and then learning that they're just as messed up as we are, have the same conflicts that we do in some capacity, makes it take on a completely different meaning. It also makes them way less scary, if that makes sense.
Well, here's the thing. It makes them less scary in one way, but it makes them more scary in a different way, because we make serious mistakes. And if the great giant cosmic woogly guys can make mistakes like that, oops, I think a lot about the Titans, especially after Shadowlands and the Pantheon of Death, for lack of another word to call them. The Pantheon of Death, they were like these constructs that kept, like, the mantle could be passed on or even placed on something else. And I find myself wondering, like, are they on that same path? Because it feels an awful lot like Hylestria and the Winter Queen aren't just some mantle anymore. They seem like personified beings. Like, if a new Winter Queen was necessary, that Winter Queen wouldn't be anything like the one we currently have. Like, do you get where I'm going with that? Like, that they feel like they've transcended? If the Titans are doing the same kind of thing, if they're going from, I am a cosmic force of ordering the universe, to I am a crotchety old beard man who gets mad at people if they try and complicate this, but ultimately means well, or I am this force of life and preservation of life, to I have a girlfriend now. Does anyone know how to love? Or no, I'm already doing it. Oh, okay. Well, that's good, right? It feels like to a certain degree the Titans are ensnared in the first one's design.
Mm-hmm.
And by ensnared, I don't mean they're trapped so much as I mean they're changing too. All of this stuff changes not just the creation, but the things that are helping make the creation exist. It changes them right back. And then they change it more. And then it changes them more. And to me, that's fascinating, because it means that we are simultaneously, like I said before, dandruff, but we're also a completely new thing that alters the world back as we're going through it. We come up with new magic that nobody had ever thought of. We can beat a Constellar.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's not possible, but we did it. We killed a Titan. There's a whole bit when we killed, oh, bloody heck.
Argus.
Thank you, Argus. Yeah. We killed Argus's Titan form, and it says you're holding this thing in your hand that shouldn't be possible. And we are not just here. We're an active force of change. And that changes up and those changes going up eventually come back down and change. And that's, to me, the engine that drives this whole thing is that change. It's that way that you've talked before about this, Joe. The way that Azeroth seems to let all the forces play there at once. And that's what got me thinking about the fact that each of the cosmic planes seems to be a couple of different forces playing together. And if it's does that mean Azeroth is essentially like this cogwheel where all the teeth of all the different other things come and engage right there, and as it turns all of them, and so it is inherently invested with all of them? I don't know. It's just, to me, the fact that the Titans could be changing, I think, is a really fascinating idea. And it shows them both being pretty damn scary, but also being pretty damn approachable. We've spoken to them. And they talked to us. They weren't talking at us. They were talking to us. And that's not something I think they would have done eons ago. In a way, it's possible that Sargeras and what happened to him was supposed to happen to him. That it was intended that he would go the way he did and do the things he did because the Titans needed to evolve. In order for them to evolve, they had to go through multiple things that they ordinarily wouldn't. And one of those might have been death.
Yeah, and because we've been told that Titans don't die and that what we did was an abnormality, but we haven't really talked about or considered what would happen when the Titans died, because again, and this is just going back to stuff that and I'm going to air quote the word no here because a lot of this is being called into question. We were told that they were fixing the final Titan because they were looking to fight this oncoming great evil that's coming to consume our universe or destroy our universe. Well, if something's coming to destroy the universe, the Titans are part of the universe, and that means that they can be destroyed too, which means there had to have been a mechanism. And then we find out later, while we're basically hunting down Sargeras and the Legion and doing all that Sargeras was able to kill them in line with the stories that we heard, but that their souls didn't transfer, or whatever made them, their energy, their cosmic essence didn't transition. It wasn't sent anywhere. Instead, he grabbed it. Well, the question is, what would have happened if he didn't grab it? If they're not intended to go to the Shadowlands and they're just kind of left to their own devices, what would actually happen? And do the Titans even know what would happen? Would they just become would they form another chrysalis around them and be born into another planet-sized entity? Would they be cracked again? Is it an endless cycle of rebirth for them? We have no idea, because I don't think they knew either. The first time that they died was likely when Sargeras killed them, when that whole battle happened, when they shoved aspects of themselves into their watchers, which, again, they didn't plan for that, I'm sure. It was a last-minute thing from Aman'Thul to slam bits of their essence to sort of preserve their keepers, which smacks to me of desperation, which means that they have no bloody idea what happens when they die. So I think Matt might be right, is that everything that happened may have needed to happen. It may have been part of the grand design that we don't know about, right?
Yeah, and for that matter, for us, design has a finality to it that might not be the case for how the first ones designed things. They may be this may all be just constant random propagation, and so there's a lot of possibilities here.
Well, I mean, one of the things that I'm thinking about now that you're mentioning this, what caused Sargeras to go down the path he went down? He was shown a world completely consumed by void. Who was there? Who showed him that world?
Denathrius.
And where are they from?
Denathrius' little hideout in the Shadowlands.
And I'm still not convinced that Denathrius wasn't playing some weird Xanatos gambit of some type.
I honestly find myself wondering if Denathrius was working, we know he was working with the jailer for some time, back before he was even the jailer. It's quite possible that the two of them are not necessarily aware of what they're doing as they become less and less of a, just a blank name force and more of an actual being. Denathrius couldn't have, from the moment they made a Denathrius construct, he couldn't have been the snark monster that he was when we met him. You know what I mean? That's a personality. That's a big personality. No construct starts off with a personality that big. That's something you grow into.
Agreed. And I mean, it's also possible that like before then, I mean, again, and like to your point here, some of the actions he's taking or may have taken or may have commanded his creations to take may have been predetermined. They may have been stuff that the first ones put into motion. For all we know, it could have been part of the first one's design to have Sargeras fall, to have him turn to the dark side, as it were. And I'm air quoting that a little bit,
Yeah, but
because
I
it would
get you, though.
force the Titans to evolve. They would have no choice.
Yeah, it's
And
not like Denathrius and the jailer or Zoval, whatever you want to call him. They can't undie. They can't go forth into the realm of the living and experience living, but they can help somebody else do the opposite.
yeah, and they can push, they can influence, they can manifest things into the living realm potentially. Maybe because of that back door that was created, or maybe because that's the whole point of the first ones. But yeah, there's a lot here, and I think for me the largest takeaway, and this is the thing that I wouldn't be surprised if we come to find out when we get to the final portion of this trilogy, is the Titans may not have been bad guys. They may just be idiots, right? Like
I
they,
mean, yeah, that's fair. Or not even necessarily idiots so much as you don't get mad at your toaster for not knowing how to do calculus.
yeah,
Toaster.
yeah, and like even then, even with them evolving, and even with them not telling us things, and whatever the case is, we don't know that that's not what their primary programming was. We don't know that that was their directive. We don't know any of that stuff because again, first ones aren't here to tell us, and we didn't find the playbook, right?
Nope, absolutely not.
And we
You're
didn't
right.
find the instruction manual. We found bits and pieces of stuff that we're trying to wrap our mortal brains around and make sense of. And very clearly, they're in a different league than we are as far as mental capacity and planning. Like I fully expected us to find like the when they said sepulchre of the first ones, I immediately thought we were going to find some ossuary or something with like these gigantic cosmic bones or these primordial bits of creation or being or essence, not a workshop, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
they are so leaps and bounds ahead of us in this regard. It's unfathomable to know what they set into motion yet. And again,
And
I
it's
good.
and that basically leads us to the idea of what the Emerald Dream is actually for. Because the Shadowlands are clearly there for a kind of cosmic reset on Anima. Like the stuff that Anima is being used to do, the lives that it fuels, end up in the Shadowlands, and then because of Ardenweald, go back to the Emerald Dream, it seems. Right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And if the Emerald Dream is therefore circulating Anima back into the physical world from that point, it's essentially like an engine that creates change. And change seems to be the thing that we're all looking for here in terms of what's being created is a constantly evolving creation.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's the case, what the Titans are for and what their relationship to Emerald Dream would ultimately be a lot messier than Amanthul would be comfortable with because he would need it, whether or not he wants to admit it. And that's something I like to think about here because it feels like the Emerald Dream is a really good example of that fractal nature of reality in the Warcraft setting. I mean, look at the Shadowlands, like where there's constantly new places. We didn't go to anywhere near all the Shadowlands. We didn't even get close. We mostly just went to the ones that are the biggest and most influential. We've not even been inside the Twisting Nether. We've used it as a transport thing, but we've never explored it. Like the only time we've been in there is specifically Outland because it's floating in, kind of like on the edges of it. So yeah, there's a lot of possibility for in terms of like what this is all doing and what that great evil might even be. Like we talked before about the Devourers. Are the Devourers are they really entities that eat anima, or are they more like, for lack of a better word, like kernel panic errors?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Like, is a Devourer realm a realm that just borked and you gotta, it's not processing right, and now it's just a big anima sink, and these things coming out and eating things are just the manifestation of that in a way that the entirety of this whole setup seems to create beings. The Devourers are beings that embody, like, oops, this, error message. This is not good. So yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of this to it, but I
I
definitely
mean,
would like to see
we'd always
more
talk about
them.
how I think the Devourers are the Langoliers from Stephen King's book, but like that's a whole other
I,
thing.
yeah, I almost think that they're kind of the opposite. Oh no, the Langoliers themselves. No, yeah, I think we're on board there because the Langoliers basically just rip everything down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there is no like the whole concept of there is no past, there's only the future. Time must
Mhm.
inevitably march on, and if you find yourself getting stuck in the past, you're just going to die. Like because it has
Yeah.
to be torn apart. It has to be torn apart. It like the old cartoons where they're riding on a train and one person is taking the tracks up from behind them and passing them to the forward and putting the tracks down in front of the train, and then, so you just constantly have a track going forward kind of thing.
Mhm.
But yeah,
Yep.
that's a whole other thing. We'll be here for another hour, so
Yeah, it's actually an interesting story, by the way.
it is 100% one of the few Stephen King books that I actually, or stories that I really enjoy. But Zani, as always, thank you for the question. It led us in some interesting directions. Truly appreciate it, and hopefully that answers it or doesn't answer it, whatever your preference is. Next question comes from Scribble, who we've had a few from in the past before. In Hollowfall, we learned from Farron about the board game Light's Gambit. What other games do we know about in the world of WoW? And what do they tell us about the cultures they come from, the people that play them, etc.? So, and Matt will probably have a better memory than I do for this. The only ones that I know of that they explicitly mention in game is there's a dice game played by rogues, which is also now referenced in their toolkit. There is the whatchamacallit. Man, words are hard today, folks. Hearthstone is a game inside of World of Warcraft.
Mm-hmm.
And Rumble is a game inside of World of Warcraft. I don't know if we've released. I'm sure we have, and I'm probably blanking on it.
You're blanking on the really big one from Karazhan. Chess.
Well, yeah, we know chess exists. Yeah.
They play chess because they've got a big chessboard up there, and you have to get through it if you want to go fight the creatures on the roof. So, I don't know of many other referenced games. There are references to I cannot remember the name of like the most powerful druid in the world and his like practically immortal girlfriend who is the high priestess of Elune. What is happening? Toronto Whisperwind and Malfurion have been referenced to be playing a game, but they didn't tell us what the game was. They just mentioned they were like doing that while talking. That's all. I mean, there's also like ball game because we know that they have balls and they play games with them. That's a reference. We've seen children's toys. We've seen balls. We know that they exist. I can't think of any particular game that they've actually said was played, with them, but I know that they exist. But other than that, I think, Hearthstone and Rumble, and that's kind of interesting. Hearthstone feels like a game that could have been around for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's because it doesn't require a lot of stuff. It's just you need essentially a Hearthstone board and you need cards. That's pretty much it. And obviously there's some magic involved because the cards do stuff that you couldn't just do without magic unless you were doing the game in a computer the way we do. Rumble, however, feels like it's new. Like it definitely feels like goblins may have been involved in making it. For that matter, maybe gnomes did too. Like maybe they, some guy made a game and go ahead.
No, I just remembered, speaking of gnomes, I just remembered mecha gnomes have battle bots.
That's true. They do.
It's literally.
I don't know. I didn't think of that as a game, but you're right. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, I mean, they create bots and have them do war with each other. I mean, it's essentially a game, I would imagine.
It's Rocket Sock and Robots.
Yeah, it's Rocket Sock and
more
Robots.
Advanced.
Yeah, slightly more deadly.
The fact that they have dice and they have cards certainly implies that they have card games and dice games aside from the ones we've heard of. Dice for gambling is as old as like the Romans for in our history. So in their world, it's very unlikely that they haven't been doing various games with dice throughout Azeroth's history. And again, the fact that they even have cards implies that they have card games. And we know that there are people playing card games because we hear about people winning and losing in card games. What's his name? Flynn Fairwind.
Yep.
Talks about losing a ton of money. So that's all the case. But in a lot of times they don't bother to actually say what the games are.
Yeah,
which I think is a bit of a sadness.
I would agree. I think that it's a little bit of world building that I think would be really cool. Because again, every culture generally has some form of like game or hobby or pastime, but I'm trying to think how to phrase this. they don't spend enough time on it, and I don't think they would need to spend a whole lot of time on it to make it worthwhile. Little things like they just did with Hollowfall, with the Arathi, in learning about Light's Gambit. I think that's really important. It didn't take a whole lot. It was a couple quests and a little bit of storytelling, right? You can do that with a bunch of the other races. You can do that with the Vol'dun. You can do that with the Sethrak, because they very clearly have stuff. The Volpera have what you call it, the they do plays and they do like stuff like that. Why not spend a little bit more time world building and fleshing those out just a little bit? I think it'd be really cool. One of the things that I like about Dungeons and Dragons so much, and I'm sure other people do as well, not to tie this into that, but I mean, I'm going to, because it's my show and I'm going to do what I want. Things like Three Dragon Ante and Dragon Chess and stuff like that are games that they actually took time to flesh out and make them into real games. Like, you can go and play these games. And it was such a nice touch that they did that, because it made the world feel a lot more alive. And then over the years, we've seen a lot of different depictions of this stuff in various books and modules that they've released over the years that add a little more life to those various heritages. And I really would love to see WoW do that, especially now the game's been around for so long. You can't tell me that the Tuskar don't have like a slap the fish game or something like that, or like hide the fish in somebody's knapsack or whatever. Like, there's going to be something that they do for fun.
Slap the fish and hide the fish, dude. These are not names that you could call your game.
Why not? You could. I'm not saying you should. You could.
Yeah, slap the fish in particular just sounds wrong. I think these definitely would have to have names like, sustenance sustenance gang or something. I don't know. The Tuskar are fascinating people, and I really would like to see more. I'd like to see more about, like, what are the relation between all the Tuskar in the world?
Yeah.
Like, are they all coming from like one single civilization and spreading out? Or are they at this point their own individual peoples, and they don't necessarily have a lot in common or talk very much? I do think we could definitely do more with the Tuskar than we have. I'm not just saying this because I know Joe desperately wants to play one. I think that there's room for more.
I was just going to say it'd be a real great segue into making them a playable race, allied race. Just saying. All right. Well, I think we got time for one more question here. And this one comes from Smith Wesson, who happens to be a goblin hunter, which with that name, it could be nothing else. In Isle of Dorn, there's a quest to kill Mage Slayer Pythethil. He looks like a Botany from Warlords. Is he? I remember in the quest to get the Magar orcs, you see some Botanis and Saberons run off into the Barrens during the end cinematic. Do we have any other evidence of either of them existing on Azeroth in-game? This is the first I think we've really like actively seen the Botany on Azeroth.
Well, I mean,
was there another one?
Well, yeah, the first time we see the dungeon, there's that dungeon where you go in. I can't remember the name of it.
Oh,
now,
yeah, no, it's still there. That area does still overlook Stormwind. Yeah, I completely forgot about that.
A bunch of Botany basically punched a hole through and they were literally in the woods outside Stormwind. Like you could look down and see Stormwind. It's very far from impossible for some of them to have like run off into the woods and just start talking to Azeroth's like plant beings. Azeroth has plant beings already. The Botany could very easily find allies, maybe make some enemies. Certainly could start setting up some enclaves where they could reproduce. I don't know if that means that they're already all over the place, and certainly getting to the Isle of Dorn would seem like a task. On the other hand, he could have been in Dalaran when it blew up.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Dalaran loves to trap people. The reason that dungeon existed was that the what is the name of the mages and why am I not remembering this? My God.
The Kirin Tor.
The Kirin Tor, thank you. The Kirin Tor had a magic prison, and they love to put all sorts of weird stuff in the magic prison. Like, all the time. Like, yeah, we have an undead dragon over here. Why? Well, we caught it, so we figured we'd put it in here. Couldn't you just have destroyed it utterly? I can't study it if it's been destroyed utterly. So it's quite possible that they stuck a Botany mage killer, and he might very well be Mage Slayer, Phythily there, because he goes mad that they locked him up. He might have started killing mages out of you put me in a prison. I don't know, but it certainly isn't beyond possibility for there to be botany on Azeroth.
Yeah,
we got all sorts of other stuff on Azeroth from Draenor. Why not?
Yeah, I suspect we're going to see more of them, especially as we find places that maybe we didn't know existed and stumble upon them later on.
For that matter, couldn't they have come through during the first war? That portal led back to Draenor, which, as we know, is where the botany are from. So we could have actually had botany on Azeroth this whole time and didn't know about it.
Yeah, we could have. We could have had them here the entire time. Because one of the things that this made me think of, this question in particular, is another wild tangent that Matt will appreciate where I'm going with this. The botany have always reminded me of Warhammer 40k orcs.
They do actually. Now, once you know the secret of 40k orcs, absolutely.
Yeah, and so the secret is 40k orcs are fungus. They are essentially bioengineered entities that are completely asexual and essentially replicate by releasing spores wherever they are. And then new fungus grows and becomes orcs or anything in the orc genealogy. The botany are a lot in the same way to me when I look at it and I look at the world and I go back and look at Draenor and look at what happened in that dungeon in particular. If they're just plants reproducing by releasing spores or, something that's been fully pollinated or I can't remember the word for
it.
Pollinated. Thank you. Wow. Yeah. Something that's been fully pollinated into the winds is not unheard of. And so it is entirely possible that in any of the excursions from Draenor here, that some of those spores may have landed. And because we are pretty rich in spirit, even with Azeroth consuming a bunch of it, that's just the thing that happens here. Plus, we're sort of this nexus point of all these other energies. We don't know if they can feed on things that aren't spirit. Maybe they could be, feed on fel or light or whatever the case is and grow into different versions of the botany. We know that they can handle arcane. There's a whole thing where we deal with a whole bunch of mages. There's that one encounter when we're going through the gardens in the Nightborn city. It's a botany mage. Yeah. And he's saying that, it was an elf that transmuted itself. It doesn't matter. He got infected. He essentially became a botany. We've seen sort of that resilience. So it's entirely possible that they exist other places in the world and we have no bloody idea about it. Living plants, sentient plants is not an abnormal thing on Azeroth. And yes, they could have come over during that time frame. They could have come over with the Magaur orc stuff. They could have come over during the actual battle when we were on Warlords of Draenor and going through the dungeon, which I cannot remember the name of for the life of me, even though we just had it as a mythic key.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
They could have also just been here, like Matt said, for years and years and years. The Saberon are also in that same category because the Saberon, to me, are not necessarily an exclusive evolution, if that makes sense.
No, I mean, for one thing, we've got cat beings on Azeroth. They're just four-legged instead of, there's that right off the bat.
The Tol'vir.
The Saberon, the Tol'vir. There's also a simple possibility that we've had Saberon on Azeroth for a while because a big portal to original Draenor was opened at one point and a bunch of stuff came through it.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't all have to be like just the Horde. The Horde left that thing open until it was closed. It was open and the armies of Azeroth showed up to close it and had to basically destroy it. And even then it didn't want to close. So it's quite possible that while the Horde were off rampaging and nobody had time to come try and close this portal, that Saberon could have come through and they just would have gone off into the woods and lived somewhere. They wouldn't have necessarily cared. On Draenor, they're not expansionist or militaristic or particularly interested in you. As long as you leave them alone and don't go into their territory, they're fine. If they're wandering around murdering stuff and nobody knows about it, it's quite possible.
Well, there's another thing that I also would like to bring to awareness as well, which is something that was an old feral druid talent that may have led us to a little bit of an answer on this one that have existed longer than we possibly know of. And it's the Claws of Shirvala, where it allowed druids, feral druids in particular, cat druids, to turn into a creature. Literally, this is the description of it. Renegade druids have developed the ability to shapeshift into a creature half man and half cat. This alternate cat form allows the use of all non-damaging druid spells while shapeshifted and increases versatility. Blah blah blah. Also comes with a lovely quote from Archdruid Hamel Room Totem, which is, "Have we learned nothing from the Scythe of Elune?" So I will absolutely believe that just like the Scythe of Elune and just like the aspect of the Pact and just like all of these things that druids were messing around with before, that they would have messed around with this at some point as well, even before this talent existed. Go for it.
There's the fist weapons in Zul'Gurub.
Yes, there were. And what were they made of?
I think they were like the claws of something. I can't remember the name. I just remember that they turned you into a big walking tiger thing.
And remember what those bosses turned into?
Yeah, they turned into a giant walking humanoid tiger monster.
And a panther.
And a panther, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it seems quite possible that, they could have... We have Worgen now that are essentially like, they shapeshift, but we don't know. There could be like Saberon type people on Azeroth who don't shapeshift or who even do shapeshift.
Yeah,
who knows?
I would posit that it is a statistical probability that we have had Saberon or Saberon adjacent entities, humanoids, on Azeroth for as long as druids have been a thing. And even possibly before that, it doesn't necessarily have to be from Warlords of Draenor. I think that this is just, it seems like one of those things that just would be a natural conclusion for people that are messing around with turning into animals. Like, I'm reminded of being a teenager sitting at my friend's house playing werewolf and like, oh, why would I be anything other than this hybrid form? I get to be a giant man wolf and destroy things. Or I get to be a giant bast creature where I'm a giant cat man and I destroy things. Like, if you're a druid and you're like, oh, I can turn into a cat. What if I'm a cat that's like big and buff and I can just like throw people around? That'd be cool. Let me see if I can do that. I don't know. It just seems like there would be a statistical improbability that this didn't happen before. Now, that said, where they've spread to is going to be the question, because if it is something that was born of druids at a point in time or a point of history, they could have literally gone anywhere in the entire world. Druids have probably one of the easiest times traversing any landscape, period. They can fly, they can take on various animal forms to make their way through harsh terrains and climates. Forms. They can take aquatic forms that allow them to do all sorts of stuff like that. We know that they can also adapt to elemental environments as well. Yes, the Druids of the Flame were consumed by and given a gift, essentially, but they were channeling that power and taking on those aspects. And we even saw some of that when we were doing the Belamath stuff as well, like turning into creatures of elemental fire. Druids are capable of doing that. And going back to the famous argument that Matt and I had way long ago on the show between what came first, shamans or druids, there's an inexplicable circling between the two where there is a relationship to the spirits and the elements in both forms. What that relationship has differed, but that doesn't mean that it didn't exist prior. And we don't necessarily know the old druid ways. We don't know every secret that Cenarius taught everybody. Malfurion's not going to tell us. Not anymore. He's got his own stuff.
There are other beings like Gonk that can teach you secrets. It doesn't have to be Cenarius. Yeah,
and I was going to say that, like, the trolls didn't learn from Cenarius. They learned from the Loa, right?
Yeah, specifically Gonk. Like, he's one of the big ones who's basically came in and said, no, let's teach these guys. And for that matter, they have a lot of animal Loa.
Yeah.
Like, seriously, a lot of them.
Going back to the Zul'Aman and stuff like that. Like, they're essentially taking on aspects of the Loa when they're turning into these forms. So we know that they were capable of doing this. This is before we had troll druids, mind you. Just throwing that out there. But please continue, Matt.
No, that's my point, though. I mean, just because we've seen them mostly, like, it's quite possible for somebody to go to one of these Loa and instead of, like, saying, hey, I want to, like, let you possess me and turn me into a host body, be like, look, how's about you teach me how that shape-shifting thing and I'll do something for you? Because we know that the Loa like to make deals.
They're gaga for it.
Yeah. And, I can imagine a goblin going in there and really messing things up with like this complicated deal. And the next thing you know, we get a lot of little were goblins. And like we got the Volpera. Nobody knew about the Volpera until suddenly we knew about the Volpera.
Mm-hmm. Same with the Sethrak.
Same with the Sethrak. There could easily just be Saberon or Saberon adjacent cat people.
Yeah, it could have been a natural evolution. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe they were druids once, maybe they weren't. I don't know. I just think there is a lot of. I wouldn't let anything stop me from putting Saberon on Azeroth if I wanted them to be there. You know what I mean? If I were involved in that. Like if you have a story for it, just there's lots of ways.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things that it opens up a lot of doors for other things. Like again, the idea of certain things not being unique in the universe is probably better than making things unique in the universe. Like it just makes more sense. It gives more options. And also I like the idea of Azeroth being this gigantic, diverse life form that we know nothing really about. Right. Like, and that's sort of like the MO of some of the stories that we're getting, like going through with the Hollowfall and learning that there's lands that we didn't know existed. The whole Dornogal thing in general. We didn't know this existed until we started figuring out stuff in Dragonflight, really. Right. And we always thought that there were just these two continents, which never made sense to me personally. And I remember Matt and I in some of the earliest episodes, and Anne as well, and this may have something to do with it that Anne's there helping with the story, but we always thought that there was more to the planet than was ever really originally conceived. Like the original globes that existed in Alduar that were very quickly patched out, but like they showed way more land masses than just what we saw with Azeroth. Some of the original maps that existed in some of the original concept arts that never got used, some of the places that were referenced that, yes, they were wildly different now, but like the Dragon Isles has been written about and existed since before WoW was World of Warcraft. It was written about when it was still the Warcraft RTS series. There were sketches for it. We were supposed to go there in vanilla WoW. It was supposed to be a thing that was supposed to be planned for that and just got scrapped for other things because time and direction changed. But we still wound up going there. And it's this whole diverse landscape. It's a pretty large landmass. Like, yes, you can fly from one end of it to the other, but I want you to take a moment and consider that. Consider how big these expansion lands are then really consider how absolutely massive Kalimdor and the Eastern Kingdoms are. Like, they may be the biggest land masses, but they are definitely not the only land masses. And I think that's absolutely fascinating. And the War Within has opened up a whole new set. And I said this before we got here. It's opened up the express possibility of other layers of the world existing in capacity that we had never really considered before. The subterranean aspect of the War Within now calls into question every possible surface area of Azeroth and where life can persist. And that is absolutely fascinating. We haven't even talked about our wonderful feral orc elves because we haven't really gotten through their story quite yet. But our wonderful allies, they lived, they flourished, they evolved underground. Their entire society exists underground. Before the Arathi and everything else, Nerubians exist underground. And their origin, I think, is called into question too, which we've talked about before, where were they actually made from old god bits or were they just transformed by the old gods and repurposed? But like, there's now the option of so many other cultures, landmasses, that may exist under the water or under the surface of Azeroth in various layers, like shells, like various different shells of Azeroth. And I find that absolutely fascinating and ripe with potential. So there could be cases for anything to exist on Azeroth. And I really like that because now it means there's endless possibility and endless creativity. Sorry, I've rambled about that a little bit, but it just made me very excited.
No, it's fine. I was actually thinking to myself also, we know that there are other nations with other magic traditions and so forth. It's quite possible they could have pulled in some Saberon.
Yeah.
We never know. Maybe like some Saberon like shaman poked a hole and came through in some other part of the world we've never even heard of.
Yeah, portals are not a unique science. But hopefully that answers your question or gives you further speculation and excitement, Smith Wesson. I think that's going to do it, though, for us today. Again, friends, reminder that Blizzard Watch is made possible due to the generous contributions of patreon.com/BlizzardWatch. Your continued support means this podcast site and community is able to thrive and grow. Blizzard Watch supporters enjoy exclusive benefits like early access to the podcast, better chance of having your question answered on our podcast, or the Q&A ads-free site experience. Again, if you have questions for this or any of our podcasts, be sure to send those in to podcast@blizzardwatch.com. Specify the show that it is for in the subject line, as well as any special pronunciation of your name. If you want us up on Discord, we have the Q and Podcast Questions channel, which is open to everybody. Same rules apply. Or you can hit us up on the Patreon Q and Podcast Questions channel, where we tend to look there first as a way of saying thank you to our Patreon supporters for helping us keep the lights on. And you can also just send us messages directly on Patreon. Make Liz do work. We do. And she loves it, I think. Maybe. But she definitely makes sure we get them.
She has the power to tell us if she doesn't.
It's true. And then if you have ideas for another show topic that you want us to cover, send those in as well. Like I said, if you are interested in Matt and I doing a whole Fantastic Four episode, let me know. I would absolutely love to do it, but I want to make sure that our listeners at home, you'd be in for it. So thumbs up, thumbs down, all that good stuff. Let us know. With that, folks, we'll see you next week.